Another outstanding teacher of Rav David was Rav Yerucham Gorelick, who learned in the great European Yeshiva of Lamza, Radin, and Brisk. How did Rav Gorelick exemplify listening to the dictum of great Gedolim and Tzaddikim?
I was zochem in my younger years to be a Rav in the Roosevelt Synagogue in the Bronx. Bronx is one of the boroughs of New York City, and it housed one of Rav Gorelick's institutions, one of his yeshivas called Zichur Moshe. Rav Gorelick himself davened in my shul for a fair number of years. Rav Gorelick was a volatile personality. His Kinas Hashem Tzvokos was legendary. He was a Radner on the one hand, grew up and born in Radin under the ambience of the Chafetz Chaim Zechatag Dibracha, and later learned in Brisk with the Brisk Rav Zechatag Dibracha, and he shared with me a particular vignette that became literally classical and part of his very vibrant personality. When he was a young boy in Radin, growing up in the shadow of the Chafetz Chaim Zatzal, he was once drafted by the Chafetz Chaim to resolve and address a burning issue. There was a maskil who was a renowned darshan and public speaker, came to Radin and was scheduled to speak in the main shul in Radin. This maskil was a charismatic and fiery personality with skills of elocution that were renowned. The Chafetz Chaim did not know, how could I stop this individual from speaking in the main shul and perhaps sharing ideas that were not necessarily in sync with the classical hashkafa of Gedolei Torah. So he was frustrated, and in exasperation, he called Rav Gorelick, who was a young boy, before his bar mitzvah. I'm not sure exactly how old he was at that point in time. I would imagine around 10 or so, from what I gather. And he enlisted him, he drafted him to prevent this maskil in a proper way from making his appearance in the main shul in Radin. Rav Gorelick told me he had a group of his chevra, his contemporaries, whom he described to me as, in Yiddish, he used the terminology, but I would, in English, translate it as street urchins, something along those lines, his yeshiva pals, to come, his chevra, and devise a strategy, a scheme to carry out the mission of the holy Chafetz Chaim Zatzal. They came up with the following strategy. The maskil entered the main shul. Apparently the main shul there had a number of entrances and passageways leading to the bima and the podium near the Aharon Kodesh. Rav Gorelick stationed several of his compatriots at each entrance, at each passageway into the shul. When the maskil began to speak, after a few moments, the shul was packed, literally, packed, completely, because he was a powerful speaker. Suddenly there was a commotion and pandemonium as each of these chevra, each of these chaverim of Rav Gorelick, each of these young man, we'll call them, suddenly at the signal of Rav Gorelick, ran down the varying passageways leading to the bima, screaming at the top of their lungs in Yiddish to the speaker, Zain Hoizen, Zain Zurissen, your pants are torn, and there's a gaping hole in the seat bottom of your pants. They were guffawing, they were laughing hysterically. The maskil was shaken and completely confounded, began to sort of hold the back of his pants together with his hands to cover up his embarrassment. They continued with the bellowing and laughs to the point where the speaker became so nonplussed, he decided to slink out of the shul and basically run for his life to prevent further shame. Rav Gorelick told me he was extremely proud of this quote-unquote sacred mission that he carried out on behalf of the Tzaddik Hador, who didn't want that the pure and pious Balabatim of Radin to be influenced by the hashkafas and perspectives that were not completely in sync with pure hashkafas HaTorah. This position, which was daring and bold, he told me was found on the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kol leitzanusa asura, chutz mi leitzanusa d'avodah. Every type of scoffing, any kind of leitzanus is not permissible unless it relates to idolatry. And Rav Gorelick said that idolatry is not only to be understood in the literal sense, but in terms of hashkafas that are distorted, that are distended, and must be expunged and exorcised. And again, we have to understand, Rav Gorelick personified midas ha'emes. That's really what he was, honesty. His kanos was not a product of stam kanos, but a deep-seated need to correct and present genuine and authentic Torah hashkafa. That's where he came from. That's what he explained to me many, many times. And that hashkafa he absorbed from his Rabbi, the great Gaon, the Briskerov, Rav Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. He constantly quoted and cited Divrei Torah, all types of Vortlach and Divrei Torah and Chidushim and Apathams from his Rebbe. And he told me umpteen times he had so many enemies, people that he castigated, he could fill Madison Square Garden with his detractors, and there won't be enough room to accommodate all of them. He was a ball of fire. He was Eish Lahava, and he knew how to give mussar to people. But at the same time, Rav Gorelick was someone who had a tremendous love for Klal Yisrael. It was amazing to see this blend, this hybrid of emes, eish, kanos, at the same time clearly undergirded by an unbelievable ava that he had for all of Klal Yisrael.